All right. What's going on, everybody? How y'all doing? How y'all doing? We have another amazing interview, fire chat discussion here with Mitch, lead developer of Million on Mars Land Rush. Mitch, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Striker. Great to be here.
I'm gonna be honest, man. I'm really excited for this one because just everything that I've read about Million on Mars, well, it just got me. It's got me a little bit excited. So maybe we should just start off here. If you'd like, give me a little bit of background in terms of your work history, what got you to this point of your career, and we'll take it a step from there.
Sure. Where to begin? So I've been in the game industry. I've been in the game industry for about a little over 12 years now. I got my start a really long time ago as a game tester, working in the console space at companies like Namco and Atari, testing PlayStation and mostly PlayStation games more than anything else.
Okay.
Eventually, I transitioned over and started to work in the free-to-play game space as it was starting to emerge from the free-to-play MMO side. So I was working largely still in QA, customer service type roles, but sort of making my way deeper into the game industry until I eventually landed at Zynga, where I got my first break, became a game designer, and was working on games like Vampire Wars and Cityville at the sort of emergence of the sort of turn of the game industry as it was really moving into these freemium, free-to-play, and live service business type games.
That's really exciting. So when you went into Zynga, around what year was that?
It's like 2009 to 2011.
And so it's crazy to reflect on how much games have changed from now since then, and now apparently you're working on Million on Mars, right? You want to give me a little bit of feedback?
Yeah, it's funny. One of the people I'm working with now at Million on Mars is actually someone who I worked with back at Zynga over 10 years ago, who was the general manager on Mafia Wars.
Oh, there you go.
He worked in the same general studio area as I did when I was on Vampire Wars, so I've known him ever since then. And him and I have maintained our friendship for a really long time. And the company that he co-founded, Million on Mars, really that's how the opportunity sort of came to be, is that they had been largely working on this really, really great crafting space MMO in which you're building a settlement on Mars built with real crafting simulations, deep science and technology based on real world data. At the same time that they've been building this really great Steam game, they see the emergence of NFTs, of play to earn in this marketplace, and sort of this emergence of this third wave in the game industry. But of course, they want to make sure that they deliver a really great crafting game to begin with, and they don't want to sort of stray away from their initial sort of plans for that game. And so instead, they found an opportunity to extend the brand and build a new experience that is solely built on the blockchain, that's built for play to earn, it's driven by NFTs. And surely enough, I am sitting in Clubhouse circles talking about NFTs, trying to find people that are thinking about these things in the way that I have been ever since, we've been, down this rabbit hole for many, many months now, and, talking about all these opportunities and trying out all these different games. And eventually the opportunity presented itself for me to reconnect, and we started talking about things for quite a while, and the chance to, jump on and create a truly new experience from the ground up that is blockchain enabled, that is truly built around a player-driven economy, that really is the defining, that can be a defining experience of play to earn, is something that is once in a lifetime for me, and in a way that many of my previous opportunities have also been once in a lifetime opportunities. And it adds to a list of things that I feel truly fortunate to be able to be a part of at these sort of turns in the game industry.
Yeah, I mean, exactly what you were saying right now about the turns in the gaming industry. You kind of described it as the third wave, right? This new level of innovation that blockchain technology provides. Could you give me a little bit of a description of what you see the first two waves are, and then now where we're at with wave 3?
Sure. So to me, the first wave is the sort of traditional business to consumer model of consumer products that were driven both by console hardware sales and a mixture of software sales and sort of they were on physical products or eventually digital products in the near future. So that's like everything that leads up until the sort of the dawn of the internet really taking over, MMOs becoming a de facto thing, and then somewhere in between, the birth of these freemium live service games that start to sort of really, they were first catalyzed in parts of Asia, in like South Korea, but also were popular in Japan. There were examples even in the West. A colleague of mine, Dr. Cat, is known for creating one of the very first free-to-play games in the West. There are different examples of things that sort of emerged around similar times, but they've all sort of coalesced towards this notion that the notion of competition is that you cannot beat free, right? And free is the easiest way to sell something. It's the easiest way to get someone to try something. And if you can figure out how to make money after the fact, you have a significant advantage over anyone that's charging money. And so to me, the sort of live service, freemium-based products that have sort of emerged in that period and have become the dominant part of this industry, especially in the last several years across every platform, that to me represents the second wave. Oh, hold on a second.
No problem. You're good.
Oh, the joys of working from home.
Oh, trust me. I know those feelings. I know those feelings. No worries. What I think is kind of interesting here. When you talk about this idea of like you can't beat free, right? What's been playing around in my mind and been listening to a lot of different podcasts, doing a lot of different research is, we've started to go into a new type of world here with crypto and with finance in general, where you're now starting to see the concepts of actually like negative returns, like when it comes to interest rates, and from the play to earn model, or from like the play to earn concept, the idea before that we used to be in MMOs or different games that were free to play. Now, by going into these new worlds where players are able to earn a living, they're actually being paid to play in some of these test cases that are coming up. So it's the next step, right? If free to play is what was, this new type of innovation might be the way that you beat free.
Yep, I agree. That is the thing that only until recently was the big unknown is how do you beat free at that point? And it's literally, you pay people to play your game effectively, but it's not necessarily the developers that are paying the player. It's the game and the game economy that it represents itself that is responsible for paying the players. In some really good interviews that I've read recently, there's a lot of really good people, really smart people talking about these notions. So I'm just mostly parroting things that other people have already said. But there's these notions that games are effectively digital nations, that they have their own central banking systems, their own sort of GDP in terms of their value. And I think a lot of that just makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways. And then when you add in all of the other notions that make up a traditional country or a nation's structures, a lot of those other pillars also stand up as well. You have self-governance, you have a currency, you have a set of rules and terms of operation, the way that people behave. You have like law, like sort of binding laws and consequences. Players, self-operate and produce their own goods and services within this economy, which then gets taxed. Like all these things exist within real-world economies, and it's in a way like the responsibility of game developers then is to sort of act as not just like the founding fathers of this nation that they're responsible for building, which is a really weird thing to say, but also to really set that nation up for success, to create opportunities and for growth, or opportunities for new people to be able to enter and find their own way and to be able to succeed within the ecosystem. It's a really, really fascinating and whole new way of having to think about building like live service products, because there's also real people's lives involved at this point.
Of course.
And over time, this is going to extend to the lives of potentially millions of people that are at stake, and their potential livelihoods that are impacted by the successes and failures of these digital nations. There's a lot of sort of heavy weight that comes along with this stuff that I think it's going to be really interesting on how these things unfold as the scope and the scale of these games continue to grow in the coming years.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And your description on like the growth of these digital nations or these digital economies, when it comes to, from my perspective, with Strike Team Games, like I've been trying to do my best to evaluate like how these economies can grow. And you hit the nail on the head, I think, when you said the comment about like as these player-based services that help evolve the economy, like can be both inside the game and outside the game, but revolve around this digital nation of sorts. That's the part of the overall growth that really excites me, and that's one of the reasons why I've gotten so excited with Million on Mars. How about you give me a little bit of a breakdown for anybody that's watching right now, the general gameplay structure of what Million on Mars wants to accomplish, maybe a little bit of your roadmap and how you expect that to all come out in the next few months and years.
Sure, I'm happy to. I'll try not to ramble too much. Feel free to cut me off and ask other questions.
You're good.
Get a little long-winded about this. So.
No worries.
At its high level, like Million on Mars Land Rush, which is our blockchain browser-based game, is a game that's about developing virtual real estate on Mars in a completely player-driven economy of specialized labor that's all powered by NFTs. Now, what that actually means is players take on the responsibility of getting a plot of land, acquiring blueprints for specific buildings that they wish to install on their land to develop the ability to create products and hire players to create goods and services. So the way that the player economy is designed is everyone inside of the game is producing and consuming all of the products in an economy and production that is produced by each other as well. So what that means is everyone grows their own food, sources their own water, creates their own fertilizer and soil for further crops, has to scavenge for additional resources, and has to provide and acquire the help of all the other players that they need in order to actually make those things happen. So if you own land inside of the game, and you own a lot of land, or even a lot of land inside of the game, you will always have more abundance and more things to do than you ever have the resources or energy to do in a given day. So what you have to do is actually employ and hire other players within the game economy to do work for you as the person who sort of holds the higher amount of resources within the game. And so the game is designed around this notion of cooperative achievement, where if you want to succeed in the game, you need to work together with the most number of players possible. And we've designed the economy of this game to really reinforce that so that the incentives are aligned properly to motivate everyone to work in the way that we expect success to be achieved.
Yeah, so it sounds like what you're describing here is a world in which like the building out of this civilization on Mars or this colonization is only going to be able to be accomplished by a significant group of players deciding to work together in various aspects. And the economic system behind it does make me feel, it does make me feel a lot like there can be a lot of different types of roles that can exist. Both the employer, the employee type of relationship, but also the idea of like capital investment, right? Like if someone were able to do X amount of work and be able to acquire X amount of resources, they could then use that in this economy to start their own land and go ahead and build off and create off and keep the cycle going.
Absolutely. And that is 100% our intent here. We really want to facilitate the means for players to work to own and work to earn their way towards owning their own land inside of our game. There is more than enough land to go around for a lot of players as the game grows, and our intent is to facilitate that over time, because there will be a lot more buildings that take up a lot more space, a lot more things for everyone to be doing, and we don't expect there to ever be a shortage of need for more people coming into the game to help grow the economy. Because the more players that come in means the more food that has to be grown, the more water that has to be sourced and provided for everybody every day. So the amount of those sort of base level things that have to be produced by new people coming into the game always just continues to rise. So we expect there's just going to be an ongoing need for things. And when we start to roll out specializations and skill systems where your actual, we call it stamina, not energy. I keep saying energy, I apologize. We call it, when you spend your stamina, you'll gain actual skill XP, and you'll start to gain specialized skills and the ability to do advanced labor actions that other players may not be able to do. And so when someone is actually trying to hire another player to do something that they need to craft some advanced recipe, maybe to repair a building or to do some other specific job function, the subset of players that have specialized into those more specific fields becomes a lot more narrow, and the amount of in-game currency, or Dusk that we call it, they can charge for those start to go up. So our goal is to actually create real specialized labor forces within this game economy to provide varying types of meta strategies and roles that players can employ in the way that they're playing the game. We want players to figure out all kinds of new ways to change up the meta and the strategy. We expect players will have solar farm arrays where they're just charging batteries all day long and then buying low and selling the batteries high on the market because every building in the game requires power. We expect there to be players that are hoarding ice and have just entire plots full of water filters because water is not only important for everybody to drink, but it's also needed to grow every piece of food in the game. And so these precious resources will have their own unique supplies and demands that are built within our market economy. And we're utilizing a sort of an order book system that allows players to set buy and sell price values without interfering and colluding and sort of fixing the market. We really want to encourage natural price floors and market values to exist within this game economy so that everything has a value that the players and the market assign that is not defined or sort of just magically derived by us.
So I've had the fortunate, circumstance to be able to participate in the early gameplay here, and I've had the opportunity to see how it all works out, at least at this point in time. How about we give the audience a little bit of feedback in terms of what the gameplay loop looks like, at least at this point, and then when it comes to the ideas about the NFTs, what types of NFTs are players expecting to receive and or strive to acquire? And when it comes to the currency aspect, I know that obviously you're on the Wax blockchain. Maybe we can go a little bit into why you chose that blockchain and how you think that can help the economy grow.
Sure. Let's see. So I'll start first, sort of talking more about the core loop. Mm-hmm. I think that's sort of the first thing we can talk with, and then we'll go a little bit more into the sort of the things that we'll be able to do more in the future.
Sure.
And then we'll talk about sort of the way that our currency sort of ties in everything and why we chose Wax.
Mm-hmm. That sounds good.
Great. I'm just going to make sure I make 3 little notes here so I get my orders right, because I totally forget by the time I'm done talking about the first thing. There we go. Okay, great. So the core loop of the game is relatively simple out of the gate, and that is 100% on purpose. We want to start with launching a game that you can play completely sort of self-sufficiently in a way. If you have a piece of land and you have enough blueprints, you could basically survive on your own plot of land if necessary. But the real sort of enjoyment and exciting parts of the game become when players start to specialize and trying to figure out their own layers of optimization. So the core components or blueprints that we're launching with are these 4 buildings that are the greenhouse, the water filter, the CAD, which is a cryogenic atmospheric distiller, or it's a fancy word for a dehydrator.
Okay.
And solar panels. And these 4 things allow for, and we're basically we're going to just sort of assume, for the sake of fantasy in the first version of this game, that everyone lives in sort of a shared habitat, and we're not really going to talk about that for the beginning of the game because maybe that's something that might come later. But we really want to just make the core buildings part of land development the thing that players are really focused on to begin with. And so it starts with needing to provide your own food and water in order to survive.
Okay.
So in order to do that, you need to acquire seeds from seed packs, which are available in our resource crates. You will find seeds by scavenging, which is another action that you can do at basically any time. It's just sort of a random way to spend the rest of your stamina each day, and you can sort of find random resources, or maybe occasionally you can find some dusk and seeds as well. Seeds will then allow you to plant with water and soil inside of your greenhouse and grow food. And that requires your greenhouse. All your buildings require to be powered or charged with, or filled with water rather. So you can charge them with solar batteries, and then you can fill them with water if they require it, like a greenhouse does. And once they've been charged and filled, You can then put those buildings to work. You can start crafting specific things like if you're growing food, or if you are filtering water, you're charging a solar battery, or you're creating soil. All of these types of actions can be done inside of these buildings once they are sort of set up for operation. All of your buildings have a set number of crafting slots depending on the rarity of the building, so that as you have an increased amount of rarity, the buildings give you more production capabilities, but at the expense of taking up more space. And so they do scale in a way you would expect, where the higher rarities give you a better value of number of crafting slots per the amount of space they take up inside of your land.
Okay.
But there is a balance there that's intended to prevent a runaway economy in a sense. We want there to be necessary trade-offs and considerations for players. So if you buy the most rare buildings inside of the game and you don't have land to put them on, you're going to run out of space really quickly, and your ability to sort of optimize what you're doing becomes a lot more diminished.
Gotcha. So in terms of looking at it from a top-down perspective, the way I've seen it and the way I've been able to experience it, at least to this point, is if we were to start top-down, obviously, with the idea of land, if you were able to acquire land during the launch of the project, from that land, you're then able to open up packs, building packs. Right. Okay, and these packs have the four that you were just mentioning: solar panels, the water filter, the CAD, which is the distillery, and the greenhouse.
Correct.
Okay, and each one of these plays an important role in terms of creating resources that are needed for players to be able to get their daily source of stamina, to be able to do more actions.
Yeah, so this is just basic survival. That's what we're starting with, is everyone needs to get the handle of just producing enough for themselves and just enough to sort of be able to handle the need for more players that are going to come into the game. Because as more players come into the game, the prices of all those resources will start to go up because the demand is going to go up, and the amount that they're able to produce will take a little bit of time to adjust as players sort of move through the economy. And so we would expect that there'll be this interesting sort of boom-bust cycle of players come into the game, prices go up, players do a lot of work, prices come down, more players come into the game, prices go, and this should just be an ongoing sort of...
a natural economy.
A natural flow of the economy. It's kind of how it's designed. Who would have thought? And but things get really interesting once we layer on more and more aspects of gameplay, more and more layers of specialization, and eventually release control of the value creation in our game to the hands of our players. And this to me is the part where the game really gets a lot of fun. So initially, when we launched, all of the resources inside of the game, or all the packs inside of the game, are sold by us. We sell blueprint packs to the players. They open them up. Those blueprints are burned when the building is installed on the land, permanently developing that land and increasing its sort of total value. Our intent is to ensure that the price floor for undeveloped land is as low as we can maintain it at, and we want all of the value and appreciation in land to go into properties that are developed by players that have been invested, that have been improved, that have production that they're capable of doing. We want that to be the focus that players really want to invest in and appreciate value in over time. Because we want land to still maintain, we want it to be accessible by a lot of players. So over time, once we allow players to specialize and take on roles of crafting and different specialized skills, we will eventually give them the ability to join a crafting guild and take over the ability of minting packs of the blueprints we would normally be selling ourselves. Meaning that instead of us selling the packs, the players can make their own packs, and they're in charge of the supply and the demand of these blueprints that are needed for the game economy. And players can choose to specialize and go into that field, and if they think that they want to make them for themselves, or if they want to make them and make money because they're trying to sell them on a secondary market, that's completely their choice. And once that happens, we'll stop selling those packs completely, and we'll work on launching the next game system that's probably, they will have a completely different crafting loop, that will have a different set of blueprints that we'll initially sell. And once the players get stood up on that economy, we'll do the same thing. We'll give them the ability to create those packs and join a new crafting guild, make a choice between the two that they would already have to go with, and then we'll stop selling those packs, and on and on and on. Our entire goal is to establish and set up these core economic loops for the game as we build in these different layers of specializations or different systems that add a lot of unique depth for the players to play in, but anywhere where we're normally planning to sell things, our goal is to only do that in a limited time fashion and to really put that stuff into the hands of the players.
See, now that's really interesting the way that you put it, because a couple minutes ago we went through the top-down perspective. Now, if I were to go from the bottom-up perspective, so a player that that would come into the game or into the economy that doesn't own land, for example. The idea here is that they're able to do some of the work that landowners might be restricted to because they only have a certain amount of stamina. And in return for that work or those different aspects of gameplay, the landowner then will pay the worker for use of that stamina.
Yep.
Okay, so
That's right.
So the two big concepts that pop into my mind is that there's going to be, and you mentioned it earlier too, that when we were talking about the natural evolution of an economy, like this labor demand balance is going to be really interesting, and obviously is going to be tied to the amount of players that come on board, and obviously how many landowners are there as well.
Absolutely.
The other portion that I think is really important is the idea of your in-game currency of Dusk, right?
Yep.
And how do you expect? Obviously, the company is sparking the creation of this economy by being able to sell these packs and release this Dusk to the players. And at some point in time, you feel like those training wheels will be taken away from the economy for it to strive and develop on its own. Mm-hmm. So could you explain to me a little bit more about the relationship, like what Dusk means and what Dusk represents, and then also the idea about the Wax blockchain and how these NFTs are created and work together?
Sure. Yeah. So Dusk is a in-game inflationary currency that is designed specifically to attribute the effort and the work that players have participated in the economy for. So it's literally like you spend your stamina and you get paid in Dusk by the game. And then you can use that Dusk because like every day we'll give a small amount to players just as a baseline for participating within the game economy. You log in every day, you spend your stamina, you get a guaranteed sort of minimum amount that can be used to sort of continue advancing forward in the game. But if you are smart about things and you save up and you use your resources, that can be utilized to gain value and to do lots of things within the game economy or outside of it, depending on what it is you want to do. Our long-term thought is that we want Dusk to be first and foremost to have an insane amount of utility and value within the existing game and the game economy itself. We care very, very deeply about it mattering as a gameplay token inside of the world more than it is on any other aspect outside of the game, because that's what we think will ensure that it maintains its value, basically, because it's always in demand. It will always be consumed and burned and be required for many, many in-game functions. So the things that I talked about earlier, like minting packs or hiring other players or selling things on our order book system, all of these specific actions all have economic fees associated with it. So if you're minting a pack, it'll have a Dusk fee and a Wax fee associated with minting the pack. So that's our sort of business model that we will transition to, is that we'll take a fee on the minting side of things instead of on the sales side of things, so that we don't have to take as much from a few number of people, and instead we can take a small amount from a much greater number of people, which lowers the entry cost in a lot of ways for a lot of these goods and services. So we expect that the crafting costs will come dramatically down for a single item versus an entire pack, and that should make the actual accessibility of this game go up a lot higher, especially when it's coupled with the fact that you'll be able to get into the game for just a $10 or $0 cost, depending on sort of how active you are inside of our community, or if you know a founder inside of the game.
So that's an important part when you say right now about the idea about a founder. So could you go over a little bit about the founders token, what you're attempting to do with it right now, maybe when that period ends?
Sure. Yeah. So Certainly not the most novel or unique concept. A lot of other games and projects are using this idea of a founder's token to promote and draw early interest and early adopters to their projects. Mm-hmm. We're obviously no exception to this. And the design around our founder's token is a very, very long-term value add proposition that's designed around sort of a bit of an upfront promise and a long-term sort of delivery. And so the plan for this is if you purchase one of our founders tokens, and as a bit of a shill, we've been selling them since about a little bit over a week since now. The sale period is planned to end in the middle of October. But you can visit our website, or you can check our sale page on Nifty Blocks to see if it's still available. We have a limited number of tokens that we're only ever going to sell once. Our goal for this is to just provide an insane amount of value for the people who do believe in what we're building early, and to just be able to see that realized over time. And for the way that works, we'll basically give those players what's called an access badge, which gives them the ability to invite more players into the game every single month. So normally we sell access badges into the game for $10 as a means to deter bad actors from playing the game, and as a way to ensure the integrity of the experience that we're building, because we feel that if the floor to entry is basically zero, you run a much greater risk of your game being abused or run by botters. And in this current sort of min-max real world scenario of crypto, in which people will go to extreme lengths to maximize their upsides, we feel that this is the best way to sort of thwart those kind of behaviors until we need to put in more stronger means to deter botting or any of those kind of behaviors. We really care about humans playing this game, and it's going to be something that we really kind of drive forward in the future in ways to incentivize players to proving that they're real people as well. We think that there's going to be a lot of value in the future of these experiences where players can provably show that they're an actual person that's playing, not just a person that has multiple devices or someone that is a bot that's pretending to be somebody. Getting back to the Founders Pack, you get 3 access invites every single month. You get our Founders Land Pack, which comes with 6 plots of land. Each of those come with 5 common blueprints, basically enough to really get you off the ground, get all of your initial footings inside of the game. You can kind of put some buildings down and get really comfortable with how those things feel. You get a copy of our soundtrack, which is an amazing 1-hour original score produced by Matt Gilmour, who's the son of Pink Floyd's David Gilmour. And
I got a chance to see the interview with him. That was a really good one.
Yeah, it's been really cool to be able to have such an amazing piece of work attached to the games that I'm working on. I historically have largely worked on a lot of games, and they've just, we license music, or we outsource things to be built, but to have an original score of this caliber built for this project with someone who really believes in what we're building as well is just really, really awesome. And for us to also be able to take this soundtrack, break it up into different NFTs, we give them away to anyone that wants to get a free copy of our soundtrack. You can get a song right away by signing up on our mailing list. It's available on our website. If you want to buy a copy of the full 10-song soundtrack, it's $5, but we're giving it free to founders, of course, as well. And then, of course, the thing that I think is the most exciting part about our Founders Pack is the Founders Token itself. That Founders Token is a symbol of our early adopters, and for that, we're going to airdrop a blueprint pack every week from the day we launch for a year. And the goal for that is to ensure that you get that joy of opening a pack literally every single week that you play the game, and you get to enjoy that for a year. And you can open the pack, do with it whatever you want, really. If you want to sell it, it's on you as well. I personally will be holding on and maybe opening some of mine. I still have to think what my long-term strategies are, because even I don't know what the best min-max strategies are yet. I fully expect the player community will come up with much better ones than I predict.
Yeah, that's really exciting with the idea about pretty much you have a pack day. I mean, so I'm coming from the sports cards and memorabilia world. Like the day when a new product gets released, everybody goes to the shop and everybody's like, let's start ripping. So that's exciting. That's an exciting community event that's going to take place.
Absolutely, and I'm really hopeful that we're going to see that kind of sort of emergent experience where players get to celebrate that weekly airdrop of packs coming in, and everyone sort of opening to see what blueprints they got and to see how much better that's helping them sort of grow their production and continue to build and advance inside of the game.
How do you expect the idea of how should players, at least in the early part of the game, how do you think that they should think about the concepts of like buildings versus land? Are there going to be players that are just going to want to focus on owning X amount of land or continuing to own land? Or do you expect that the player-driven economy might focus more on just having at least one piece of land of which you're building up and taking it to the next level?
I think at the bare minimum level, our hope is to facilitate the path for as many people as possible to have at least one piece of land inside of the game and to have a path to ownership. I think that that's something that, a path to a real piece of digital property that can have value that you can invest in over time, I think is a really exciting thing that really could impact the lives of so many people around the world if we're able to make that available to them. So that's something that's certainly on my mind very much. But at the end of the day, we also have to be mindful of like, well, what do you do for everyone else who's buying the land, and how do they grow value, and what are their expectations like inside of the game? And for us, I think largely we try to think about things in the way of sort of comparing into real world situations where a land on its own doesn't exactly always appreciate or just print money in its own right. The land that really derives value is pieces of land that you work and that you develop and you invest in over time. And historically, land grants and land deeds and land developments have almost always succeeded and thrived due to the people who are willing to put the most amount of time into really developing those pieces of property, who invest in their long-term value, who can adjust for the changes in the market, and it can be sort of adaptable to the forces that are unpredictable. And I think that land in this game serves a lot more like those real world parallels, because there are going to be market forces within the game. There are going to be ups and downs. There will be boom bust cycles, and it's going to be a really interesting, thriving live economy that players need to be sort of somewhat actively paying attention to. In the long term, we certainly want to allow different means of gameplay where players can play more passively, and you can set up your buildings to have your crafting slots have a fee-based approach where you basically say, you can use my crafting buildings if you want to. You just pay 10 Dusk per hour and just leave them available for anyone who wants to use them. You'll be competing against the other landowners that also want to just leave their crafting stations open and available. And there'll be an entirely separate sort of economy of the price floors of the rates for those sort of things. We could take things a broader step further and let landowners rent out entire sections of large pieces of land that they have. So if they've got a legendary piece of land with a large amount of space, they could use half of it and rent half of it and let another player sort of subdivide and build on top of that. And maybe they get a payout of, they're able to make as much money as they can for a set amount of time. But after that, the buildings they put on there are invested in that piece of land that they don't own, in the same way that someone builds a franchise on top of a piece of land that they don't actually own. Mm-hmm. And they don't own the building, but they might have to sell it back they might get a percentage back when they're done with it or something like that. We think that there's a lot of really interesting parallels in the real world that can find interesting ways to validate and simulate within these virtualized economies. And I'm eager to sort of explore every possible way that our players want to facilitate these sort of things. So for us, we're not really hard restricted on what types of structures we're wanting to build, and we're going to do a lot of things that we think make sense or that we want to start with or that we're passionate about. But if players feel strongly that it should be in certain ways as well, we're not entirely opposed to that. I mean, yeah.
It gets me really excited when you talk about the notion of we're obviously talking about the building out of an economy over the course of time. What gets me excited is when you make real world comparisons that can, from my perspective, be like an easy one-to-one to see how it could work in the digital world. Because, for example, I'm working with clients every so often providing tax services or consulting services, and a very common situation that arises for landowners is what happens in the situation when I have a building that I'm renting out, and that tenant decides to improve that building. Maybe they decide to to add another room to the foundation, or maybe they decide to tear down a wall or put in new types of equipment that will never be able to be removed. Like, they are literally increasing the value of the property that they are renting, while at the same time it's not the property that they specifically own. But in this scenario, both parties actually have a benefit. The landowner benefits because in the long term, over the course of many, many years, that the value of that property increased, while as the tenant benefits because they now get an added utility from what they're originally paying. So like, I see the one-to-one when you describe it, which is what gets me kind of excited. Now, I always think it's interesting because the mindset of gamers is different than, I would say, like the traditional capitalist business individual. But so I'm really excited to see how players decide to interact with this new world and this new economy. With even the concept like you brought up about min-maxing, that is naturally what players are going to attempt to do. What's going to be interesting to see is how often do those ideas start to change as the economy changes.
Absolutely, yeah, because every time we release a new system, a new building, a new piece of content within the game, the meta will probably have a huge reset switch to it in some way, because some other optimized way might be more efficient. There might be if we release building upgrades where you can then start burning extra blueprints to bring a building to a second tier, and it's able to produce 10 or 20% faster than before. Now suddenly the optimized strategy of space per land, per rarity, per tier is a new vector that you have to evaluate on, and it totally changes the game, right? And then we'll add a whole new layer, and that's my entire goal, is to just keep changing it up. You keep advancing to provide more paths of opportunity for more people, because if the gameplay is flat and basic, if this core loop is the only thing we have, it won't take long before it to feel a little bit stale, because players will largely be just doing the same things over and over again. And if you're expecting a different result, that's not really going to lead to a sane conclusion. So for us, we want to keep building in more depth, building in more systems, and then do what our pedigree and our experience has set us up to do for many years, which is then layer in all the best parts of live service games, which are things like content updates, limited time events, holidays, and content drops, and all the things that make free-to-play mobile games so much fun. When those things are infused with scarcity and time-based content inside of a play-to-earn game, I think it's going to be electric. It'll be real. I mean, we've seen them firsthand. We're both Lost Relics players. We know what happens when those events are running. It's a fever pitch those weeks when those limited time events are on, and that's a piece of magic that I very much, that's some lightning in a bottle I can't wait to capture for our players as well.
Yeah, that's exciting to think about. I think, obviously gamers, especially in this space when it comes to crypto games, because innovation is growing so fast. Players are obviously having the opportunities multiple times to test out the new thing, or to experiment with some type of new minting model or platform or type of business. So like, when you have these event driven types of community, organization, communities coming together during these specific times, things can get electric pretty quickly. We've seen it, like you said, in Lost Relics, and I think I'm excited to see what does that mean to the economy during those specific events, and how do people adapt to it? How do people react to it? When I see Million on Mars, I can already start to gameplay out what basic players would be thinking. Then add in all the other features that you're wanting to bring into the future. And I mean, I think there's a lot of potential, to be quite honest. Obviously you're working on it. You're spending your working hour, your career, developing this further. You brought up the concept about the founding fathers of these digital worlds, right? Being the development teams and their relationships with their players, especially at a very early stage. What do you think some of the morals or some of the ideals that the game in general, Million on Mars, could put forward for players to reflect on?
That's a really interesting question. I think at its core level, like we're very much about building a community. We really want the experience that we're building to be about a million people coming together for the sake of these common goals of bringing a positive future forward. I mean, that is the mission that our company was built upon, is not just bringing a positive future forward, but actually demonstrating how games themselves can prove out those as actual use cases. So for us, like, we're our mission-driven company, and I think our actual values and ideals that we are building upon our games reflect that in a lot of ways. We're very much about exploring beyond our planet, facilitating the opportunity to be a multiplanetary species, to provide those opportunities and to show what could actually become a really opportunistic and great future ahead of us, not just something that could be as bleak and dark as us running out of resources on this planet and losing our ability to move beyond the single planet that we live on now.
Yeah, that's something that really that touches me, because when I think about the idea of going through your white paper and having these discussions with you, like this idea of really the artistic view of creation of these digital worlds, the idea that the topic about what's happening to this planet and expanding on into space is something that humanity is going to be asking a lot of questions on, addressing directly over the course of the next 5-10 years. We've seen it. You're touching on a topic right now that I think is just going to become more and more prevalent as technology continues to advance. We see the idea about we see artificial intelligence, we see robotics, we see cryptocurrencies, blockchain technology. All of these new technologies are coming on board all at the same time, and the world is going to need to adapt to it. And I think this might be one way, from an artistic lens to reflect on some of those ideas on how it can affect, people, even if it's just 1 million of them.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, if that's the minimum amount of people we reach, I certainly wouldn't be complaining. My mission my personal mission is to try to positively influence as many people as I can through the experience of these play-to-earn games. I truly believe that if we are creating a path to digital property ownership, and we are creating these means in which someone can earn and work towards a digital asset where they live in a world which those aren't things that are actually possible, where they live outside of the legal system like 80% of the rest of the world does. To me, that kind of opportunity is really what fulfills my sort of goals in what we're building. At the end of the day, obviously, what we're building has to be incredibly fun. It has to be compelling. It has to be engaging. All the usual things that exist with a game absolutely must be true, or nothing else works. And I make no misgivings about the fact that the game has to be really, really fun. And that's, I'm a game designer. I've never lost sight of that. But at the same time, I truly believe that there is an opportunity to not only create something that's super fun and compelling that you can learn from a potential about where you can learn about science, where you can understand more about technology, and it make you a lot more curious about the world. And you can also potentially provide a means for yourself, depending on where you live. You can create an asset that is potentially of value and grow that over time in a player-driven economy. Everything about that is just super, super interesting and unique and compelling, and it's what keeps me up every single night, working as hard as I can to deliver for everyone who believes in this as hard as I do.
See, this must be where the gameplay design of both, fun and obviously accessibility come into play, because you've chosen for it to be a browser-based game.
Absolutely. Yeah, we care very much about making this game accessible. We want it to be able to be played on as many browsers, on as many devices as we can, and we deliberately chose Wax for that exact reason as well, because it's built on the browser. It's built, their cloud wallet takes 2 clicks to make. It's really easy to get into their ecosystem, and for anyone that lives around the world that doesn't have a high-end device or a computer, or it's just on their phone, we want to make this game accessible to those people as well, because we believe that everyone should have the chance to play to earn in the world, not just people who are into the latest technology and the latest trends.
And now this is where we get to the part where that keeps me up at night, is this idea of the creation of a new type of work that anybody in the world can potentially, with an internet connection, be able to contribute to, right? So, obviously, like from my personal perspective, when I've seen, industries being disrupted, frankly, because of technology, there's a lot of people out here that the work isn't as prevalent as it could be or as it was while we're going through this major technological transition. And I think this is one of the main reasons why play to earn has started to take such a strong hold in terms of how players can view the evolution of video games going into the future. If we're talking about redefining work, when I take that concept that I'm consistently researching on and looking at in depth, and then I see a project like Million on Mars, when you're literally talking about the idea of cooperative building experiences between workers and owners, it makes complete sense to me, and is one of the reasons why I became so excited in the project. Obviously from the times that we've discussed in the past, and knowing your personal background in terms of your work experience, gives me even more confidence in terms of what the potential of the game could be. Personally, that's one of the reasons why I invested in Founders Tokens. And I look forward to seeing how this entire ecosystem plays out going into the future.
Definitely. Yeah, I feel so much the same way. Many of the people in our company bought Founders Tokens with their own money as well. We have not given them to anyone for free. They're only for people who really believe in them, aside from some of our marketing giveaways that we have sort of set a few aside for. And it's been truly just, it's been not just validating, but like almost overwhelming to see how many other people are connecting with the vision we hold for this game and the way that we want to bring this forward. Everyone has really sort of bought into this vision and really can't wait to be a part of what we're going to build and grow. And I'm even more excited to be able to sort of build this alongside everybody, and to make sure that everyone's voice is heard, that that their concerns are always listened to, and that this game at the end of the day is a product of everyone's contributions, not just ours. See,
yeah, that's really the key of it. And for the people that have been tuning into the YouTube streams and the Twitch streams that I've been doing, especially like within Lost Relics, like I've talked about this concept of being able to spark the economy and help it grow and help it drive. At points in time, I started to realize that when it comes to these video game economies, these player-driven economies, that a majority of the mentality that players typically bring in is this idea of, if I do something, if I accomplish X task, I can get a reward, right? But as this space starts to develop, and as players, I think, become a little bit more sophisticated in terms of how these economies work, I think players' mindset starts to shift from, instead of what reward can I receive for my time or my effort, and going into what can I do to build a better future reward for myself, which typically means investing back into these economies. Even in situations, if we're talking about a real world economy where prices are constantly going up and going down, it's literally the idea of at some of the hardest points in time, those are the best times to be able to help push the economy going forward. And that's what I consistently like to see, and how I personally act, and what I don't know, it's what gives me my passion in terms of like seeing these worlds be built out literally in front of your eyes.
Oh yeah, it's truly wild to just see these experiences being stood up. And there is one unique thing about the blockchain and blockchain-based games that, as for me, that I am really, really appreciative and excited for, which is that the blockchains live forever, and so does the data and the tokens that exist on them. For my entire career, I have built, leading up to this, I've built pretty much only live service free-to-play games, and virtually my entire career is built on a graveyard of games that you cannot play or see anymore. They're games that you could barely find articles about from 10 years ago in websites that are not online anymore because games aren't popular on Facebook, and MySpace isn't even a thing anymore in the way that it was 10 years ago. And this is, and as we continue to progress further down the line, more and more of the games that I built, even on mobile, will be a faint history of dead servers and inaccessible games that you can never play. I truly believe that we're at a beginning of a new renaissance where creators and consumers are connecting directly with each other, and the art and the products that they are creating and consuming all will live on forever on the blockchain. And we finally are going to move beyond this notion of things that sort of get lost to history, and that we will be able to really preserve things for time and ensure that the longevity and the memories of the things that we are creating will have the chance to live on forever. And I don't want to get too emotional about these things, but the idea that we've already had the discussions internally about what happens at the end of this game, and we've already pre-planned for how we plan to solve these things. We already have a plan written down, which is we will basically commit everything permanently to the chain in a way that it can live on forever, and that the players will all be interact with smart contracts to control. We have already, because we come from that background of most of our games being dead effectively, we care very much about this being we want to do this right, and we want to ensure that this experience in this metaverse that we're building can stand the test of time.
That resonates so much with me because I'm going to be honest with you, Mitch. I've spoken with a lot of different individuals across the crypto space, and everyone has their different opinions on where everything is going to go. And even internally myself, I've had plenty of ideas that I personally haven't shared, just from the idea of maybe some fear, maybe some idea of anxiety about what I think the future can hold. You're one of the very few individuals that, without us having this one-on-one discussion, that the words that are coming out of your mouth resonate with me, because those have been the thoughts in the back of my mind that keep me awake at night. And when I obviously as a player investor, I have to come across, I have to do some type of evaluation in terms of what are the projects that I want to both, contribute capital and time, into. And when I hear about these concepts and these ideals that it's just something that I personally I personally have to be in, no matter what happens. On top of that, I start to think about, when I start to come up with some type of evaluation, just from a very early, it's so hard when it's so brand new, right? I start thinking about the concept of you were saying something that lasts forever, and I was thinking about at the end of the day, this entire economy is going to probably be based on different players' opinions of what they're wanting to get out of it, right? What are they putting in? What are they bringing in? And my guess, and I could probably going to be completely wrong, just like how you were saying about min-maxing. My guess is that a project like this has the potential that, as a community, to build the quote unquote equivalent of a world wonder. This idea of this shared ecospace of all these different players contributing to build this massive type of wonder that, at the end of whenever that occurs, people can reflect back on and look and say, with the thousands and hundreds of thousands of hours that were invested, this is the final piece that everyone can reflect on and be wow, this is what has been created by a group of individuals that don't know each other all across the world.
Yeah, I think that speaks to me in so many ways. Absolutely. Because this planet, this metaverse of Mars that we're building is meant to be developed. It's going to be permanent. It's going to be sort of built, and that is, it will sort of stand on its own in a lot of ways. And our hope and desires are to allow people to always be able to visit it, and to be able to sort of go back, and if they have that connection from a long time ago, they can always sort of maintain that. I've tried to go back to playing old MMOs from years ago and visit my old characters or the old servers I'm on, and most of them are not there anymore. My characters are wiped, or those accounts have been compromised or locked, or whatever the reason is. And we're also in this new era where your keys and your access to things are so much more tightly controlled that I don't worry as much about those things like access anymore. I'm very confident that we'll maintain control of most of these things just because of the way it's going. And to be able to, connect and go back into these virtual worlds, I think is going to become really exciting. And because things are so permanent on the chain, it also those things don't only have the opportunity to live forever, but they can also evolve forever. People can take the original ideas, the original presentations, and bring them into the future in a whole new different way. We've already seen this with existing, projects and tokens and chains. The painting on my wall is a curio card, and this was an original token that was before NFTs or FTs ever were a unified standard that existed on the blockchain. And now if you were to buy one of those on OpenSea, you need to buy it with a special wrapper that wraps the actual original token so that it can be presented properly on OpenSea. But inside of there is the old technology, the old original version of that token. It is in there. You can technically use a unwrapper and get it out if you really care about having the original thing, but it doesn't look as good as when you have it in your MetaMask wallet and you're able to see it on OpenSea. And to me, that's the inevitable direction that a lot of these things will head. We'll see things sort of become rewrapped or retokenized or sort of represented, and they'll be carried forward for the things that people care the most about preserving. And I think that it's that's going to be a measure of the communities behind them and how much they care to preserve the legacy and the spirit of what those projects represent. And I mean, it just brings it back to what we were talking about earlier. It is always about the community and those sort of values that are built upon by the creators of the game from the beginning.
Oh, man, I mean, to be honest, it's exciting, especially obviously getting near the beginning of a project and having the ability to do your part, even if it's as a developer, as a player. It's an exciting concept. You have my complete support, and I'm going to be here, for the foreseeable future. I'm excited for the launch of the game. Obviously, we still have some time before that. Could you give me a quick rundown for anybody that's watching what over the course of the next few months, what your timeline looks for in terms of the project?
Yeah, sure. So right now we are still in what we are calling sort of our pre-launch phase, where you can play the game in a sort of single-player version where we're missing some of the key, what we would call multiplayer or sort of social aspects of the game. For anyone that's watching this, feel free to join our Discord at milliononmars.com/Discord. I will happily give you an invite to the game to play for free if you want to come check it out. We're eager to get some early feedback. If you want to buy a Founders token, you can also get in for free with that as well. But if that's out of your range, it's totally understandable, and I would be more than happy to, get some more people into the game to give some feedback. So we're looking at about roughly 6 weeks of work from where we are now in terms of where we're trying to target for our launch. There's an uncertainty in terms of just things that can go wrong, and we don't necessarily have guarantees on how long this will take, but our goal is to release the game and to launch in early November. So sometime within the first couple of weeks of the month.
Very exciting.
Right. Yeah. So we're not too far away. And if you followed what we're doing, we're updating and giving a lot of feedback to players on a pretty frequent basis. And we're trying to really maintain a high degree of transparency about the work that we're doing. So this week is largely just built around polish and bug fixing and rolling out our Refer a Founder program where players can refer founders and get a bonus. But I don't really I'm not trying to shill marketing. I really want to just focus on what we're building. That's the really important thing. So, the primary two systems that we plan to build are our market order system, which I've talked about before, where you place a buy order or a sell order in an order book fashion, and the game finds sort of the right mixture of buyers and sellers and creates orders and then actually facilitates the transactions. This is designed as a means to buy and sell items, but not go a traditional auction house or sort of marketplace model. Instead, it allows the prices of items to be determined by the players in aggregate, not by individuals that are trying to sort of like be opportunistic or sort of manipulating things for a lot of reasons. So we feel really excited about building this system because it's going to be the first aspect of being able to sort of play to earn. You can create things inside of the game, and then you can sell them on the market to other players that need them, and we'll start to see a demand and sort of these price floors reach and see how supply and demand is really fluctuated within the player economy. We're also going to do a dismantling system that lets players sort of destroy buildings on their land if they want to free up space. It's meant to be sort of a quality of life feature for players who want that option, but it's really not recommended that you destroy your buildings because they're gone when you destroy them. You don't get that stuff back. You don't get a blueprint back, and in the future we might give you resources. But the intent here is really like for people that know what they're doing. They want to make the space for a specific reason, and they're willing to take the loss in a way of what they're about to remove and replace. That's a relatively small feature that we'll be building just sort of in between things. The other really big system that we're building is our player work system, and that's sort of what drives the other aspect of the player-owned economy, in which you can create work orders for other players. So anywhere you would normally spend your stamina doing a job task, you can choose to spend yours or place a work order, and you literally just have to say how much you're willing to spend, and it adds it to the queue, and the players that are wanting to do work inside of the game can browse the list of jobs, pick the one that they qualify for that offers them basically the most amount of money relative to most amount of dusk, relative to the amount of time that it takes to perform the job. So they might take a job that pays a certain amount, but it takes 8 hours, and they might contrast that against something that only takes 4 hours, it pays a little bit less per hour, and they're going to have to sort of figure out what is the best value proposition for them and their available stamina when they're playing the game. Like, there's a lot of aspects to sort of what players will choose within that sort of work economy, but the goal is to just put all the work in one central place in front of all the players and make the choices really, really easy. We don't really want to overcomplicate.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, right here, before I get your final thoughts right now, before we wrap this up, the couple of things that I'm planning on doing, at least with respect to this video. First thing, I'll go ahead and put in the description of the video a link to the Discord. And I'm going to go ahead and put the white paper as well, so that anybody that was interested in what we were talking about today, go ahead and go through the white paper. I actually think it's really interesting to see how you've structured out some of the basic elements, whether it's like what percentage of rarities are in packs, or like how many packs are going to be available, or land packs, for example. So there's definitely a lot more information in the white paper. And we obviously were talking about the Refer a Founder, program there a little bit. So, my personal commitment here, if anybody that is interested, that listens to the video or that goes through and does some more research and does their own due diligence and is interested still in getting in the Refer the Founder program, if you go ahead and add the name Striker right on there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and commit that any of the rewards that come from that ability, I'm going to put right back into the game's economy. And so that may look like as packs get launched out, I may be one of the first people that go ahead and pay the wax to go ahead and purchase that from other players, so then they can make, whatever further moves that they want to do. The whole idea, I think, and it's the same idea that I took with Lost Relics, which was, hey, when Penance came out, the membership access, I said, you know what, I'll be the first one to go ahead and put in the money there, to go ahead and spark the economy a little bit from the player side. Obviously, there's only so much one person can do, but if that ends up coming out, if you end up putting Striker in that code box, I'll go ahead and be rolling all that in, because I'm excited to see how the game launches for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, for anyone that wants to do that, you'll basically have the option inside of your profile screen to put in who has referred you, and once you've entered that, basically the Founders token that you bought, or any future Founders tokens that you buy even beyond that, all count towards the same referral credits. There's no real limit beyond anything you buy after when you've watched this video.
Very cool, very cool. Any final closing thoughts? Any other pieces of information that players might be able to go take a look at that we didn't discuss, or any ideas here that any values you want to leave to the viewers?
I think you covered a lot of them. I mean, our white paper really is comprehensive. It covers a lot of things. Our Discord is a really great place to come hang out and ask a lot of questions. There's no question you can't ask. So challenge us on the design. Come ask questions about the tokenomics. Ask about the future. Whatever you want. I'm a pretty open book. I'm really accessible, and I want to build this game alongside everybody. So I'm no stranger to criticisms, and I welcome strong, opinionated people who also are really passionate about this stuff as much as I am. I truly love talking about this entire space, and am just so eager and excited to see it all blossom and grow in the coming months.
Well, Mitch, thanks so much for coming on. I'm super excited for where the project's going to go, and I look forward to the next time we get a chance to speak.
Definitely. I look forward to it as well. I'm sure we'll find some time before launch.
Take care, brother.
Take it easy, man.